back to another episode of the Amateur Hour podcast. I finally have Nico and Clarkson back on the show. How are you guys doing today?
Great, Jacob. How are you doing?
I'm doing good, Jacob, man. I'm doing good.
And today we're talking about the Toronto Maple Leafs again, but new coach. We talked about them at the start of the season, about their Stanley Cup potential, but so far this season it hasn't been showcased at all. But new coach, Sheldon Keefe. So far, so good from Sheldon Keefe. And we're just going to talk about how we think they're going to do for the rest of the season with Sheldon Keefe involved. Who wants to get us started?
Nico, I'm going to let you go first, actually.
You wanted to let me go first?
Yeah, I think you should start.
I was kind of expecting Clarkson to go first.
Yeah, no, I was expecting it too.
I have a lot to say, so I don't want to...
All right. Where do we want to start off? Let's start off with new coach. I was expecting a change to happen. My guess was that they were going to sort of ride out the season with Babcock. I think they made the right decision. It's just, I don't know why I was thinking it, but I thought they were going to ride the season out with Babcock. But them making the change towards Keefe was the right decision, I believe. I think they sort of needed somebody that needed to buy into the same system. I know we made this joke on an earlier podcast where it seemed like Dubas was doing the Moneyball thing, where he was just getting rid of players that Mike Babcock liked, so he would try and play the style that Dubas wanted, and I think now he brought in Keefe, who's going to play that style. And honestly, just play a better style for Toronto, just in general, with the players that they do have. I think it was seen with even Tyson Barrie. You brought in an elite offensive defenseman. Like, he's elite in the league, at least in my opinion. And he was held to, 5 assists throughout, however many games they played, and it was pretty bad. And in the first game that he played, I was like, this guy is unreal. He looks like he's going to be unreal. And then all of a sudden, just his minutes kind of went down. He wasn't getting power play time. He wasn't getting time just with the players that he needed around him. The system just wasn't working out with him. And people were even talking about how the league was already calling in saying, hey, Tyson Barrie's obviously not working for you. Let's try and make a trade. Mm-hmm. Dubas was just like, all right, we're going to wait. We're going to see what's happening. Now he held him. Keeps coming in. I think you're going to see Barry's numbers go up. You're going to see a bunch of other players' numbers go up, because now you're not going to be having your fourth line playing 15 minutes a game. You're going to have your fourth line playing 10 minutes a game, like they should be, so that your star players can go out there and do what they need to do to bring you into a playoff spot. If I'm Toronto, I'm not scared about making the playoffs. I think you make the playoffs. I still think, in my opinion, they're one of the heavy favorites of winning the playoffs, at least in my opinion. And that's, I don't want Toronto to win, but I still don't see any other team that's as talented as them as far as just players go. And that's why I think they're going to make a big push, and I really don't see Toronto struggling any further of the way, as long as Keefe and obviously his system works out with the players, which I think it will.
So, I agree with basically everything you said, Nico. Except for the Mike Babcock starting the season. I was a big advocate last year of Babcock getting fired after we lost in the series to Boston. Now,
I was on the same page as you.
Yeah, and you can say that Boston has a fantastic team. They still do. They consistently just seem to build their team better and better every year, and somehow their first line continues to get better and better every year, which is ridiculous. But I was a big advocate of having Babcock fired at the end of the season, not simply because we lost the series, but because
the way the series 3 years in a row.
No, well, okay, good point. But to me, it was the way that he just got blatantly outcoached, and the way that he was deploying the team. Man, you've seen it so often where in crucial moments in the game, he's putting out his fourth line. I remember even against, it was his last game coaching, it was against Vegas. There's 3 minutes left in the game, and he's like, okay, yeah, we're going to send the fourth line out here when we're down by a goal. I'm like, what is this guy doing? And among other things, I just think, you look at this Toronto team, and yes, they have a bunch of superstars on their team, obviously, and a lot of, highly skilled, highly offensive-minded players. But I think where Toronto really has a strength, it's in his depth of scoring. And Babcock is one to just roll all 4 lines, and that originally worked out. He was the great coach for Toronto at the time that we signed him, simply because of the way our team was built. But when you're not utilizing Austin Matthews and John Tavares and Mitch Marner as much as humanly possible in a clutch game, when you're facing the Boston Bruins especially, you're shooting yourself in the foot. And so I was in a really deep and dark place during this 6-game losing streak, because I was like, dude, this cannot go on. They have to fire. I was just so upset with the way we were playing. It looked like we just quit on their coach, and I think the Leafs did. And there's has to be, and it'll probably come out in the next X amount of years when some actual legitimate journalist reviews Mike Babcock and his time with the Leafs, but there has to have been player conflict with this guy. Paul Bissonnette said it on the most recent Spitting Chicklets episode, where now he's heard nothing but people say how big of an asshole Babcock is, nobody likes playing for him, and he made the reference of making it seem like Babcock was one of those coaches where he genuinely thought they live and die by his sword. His decisions and his way that he deploys the team is going to single-handedly make or break this team. And I think with Sheldon Keefe coming in, it really just I feel like he's just been okay, guys, go play.
They're talented enough that you can just do that.
Exactly. They're a highly skilled, highly creative team. They don't need a lot of structure. In the beginning, yeah, sure, because you still have those young guys. Matthews wasn't he's grown, obviously. Same thing with Marner. But at the time, these guys were lacking structure in the early stages of their career coming into the NHL, and Babcock definitely did that, but he did it so aggressively and so stubbornly, there was no kind of wiggle room for growth, I feel. And by Sheldon Keefe coming in, it's like a whole new light of day for this team. They look actually happy to play. I've never seen Austin Matthews smile as much as outside of hockey and everything, just being around this team and everything. And I'll get to Tyson Barrie in a second, but I just feel like there was such a negative energy with Babcock in the room, based off how selfish and stubborn he was as a coach.
Yeah, I mean, it's still early though, because Keefe's come in and yeah, sure, you're in right now they're in that honeymoon, or just that 1 month. You got a new girlfriend, you're just having
the honeymoon phase.
Yeah,
I was actually gonna say that.
Yeah, everyone's gonna think the same thing. Everyone's gonna be like, oh, they're gonna be unreal now. We don't know.
I'm still very skeptical.
A lot of people are. I'm honestly pretty optimistic for Toronto. Like I said, I don't really see them having to worry. But I also said that at the beginning of the year, and they're in a worrisome spot.
Yeah, it'll be interesting also when we actually play a high caliber team like a Boston or Colorado is a good team. Don't get me wrong, but they're missing guys like Rantanen and Landeskog, right? So for me, I'm still kind of I don't get me wrong, I'm over the moon happy that Sheldon Keefe is in here. I think he's going to do nothing but elevate the play of these players. But I'm still very skeptical of our defense in the way it's looked a lot better over the past couple games, but there's still these underlying things where you're seeing the same thing reoccurring over and over again. And with Tyson Barrie coming in and scoring 2 goals, man, what an absolute change of pace for this guy. We were legitimately wasting one of the most talented offensive defensemen in the league. But not only that, but this guy is a #1 power play quarterback. If you look at Tyson Barrie's stats over last year, over half of his points were accumulated on the power play. So the one thing I really was upset with Babcock in the way that he was deploying Tyson Barrie is that he wasn't playing him on the first power play unit. Mm-hmm. If you watch the Leafs power play, and I've mentioned this to a couple of my buddies already, but it came from an article written on The Athletic, but the way essentially Tyson Barrie coming into the first power play unit instead of Morgan Rielly is he offers such a great threat with his shot. Morgan Riley does not have that lethal one-timer or even that lethal kind of wrister. It's kind of just like a fluff of a shot that will often just by chance find its way through. But Tyson Barrie legitimately has a good shot. So if you think of the way the Washington Capitals power play works, it's not, everybody knows Ovechkin's getting the puck, but it's not the fact that teams don't recognize that. It's the fact that they have to pay attention to John Carlson because of how deadly his one-timer is as well. So that brings the attention to him, and that's what opens up Ovi. And I think with Tyson Barrie in that same position, you'd see something very similar to where teams would now have to start paying more attention to Tyson Barrie, and then that would either open up Matthews, Nylander, or Marner, or whoever was playing the off-wing side. So that's something that I really felt that Babcock missed the ball on as well, just because of the system that he was trying to implement.
They're going to be good. Like, they're honestly going to be fine. I wonder if they're going to move Tyson Barrie up to the first power play and, like, consistently put him there. I think they will. I think it's the right decision to make. But I'm very high in Tyson Barrie. I was high on him when they traded for him. I think he's going to be unreal. I think a big part of why they're doing this bad, or why they were doing this bad, is they also haven't had Mitch Marner. You know what I mean? Like, that's a big loss.
Yeah.
And, like, as much as, like, people have, like, paid attention to it.
Yeah, but we also didn't have John Tavares in the lineup for a little bit, like for 2 weeks, and we never went on like a 5-6 game losing streak. Like with Marner being out, yes, it sucks, but the Leafs are deep enough that we shouldn't have to rely on one.
Matthews always has injuries. Like last year, he was out for a good period of time. They still do fine without him.
Exactly.
That's fair, but like I feel like Marner also has such a big role, not only on the power play but also on their penalty kill. He has a huge role to play on there, and I think that's somewhere where it's a little bit different than losing Matthews or Tavares. But again, 6 games, like with the amount of talent they do have on the team, I'm not making an excuse for Toronto. I still think I don't see how they're behind both Montreal and Florida.
Yeah,
like they're like them and just the Lightning have been pretty underwhelming this year. I don't know what's going on with the Lightning, but even with just Toronto, like they definitely still have a lot of steps they need to take before they can really make a push in the playoffs again. But I think they're taking the right steps, and that's the positive.
Yeah, for sure. And I've definitely seen, since Keefe has come in, an improvement with the defense, whether it's been like minimal, but they just seem a little bit more bought in, and especially in terms of the activity of them jumping up. Like, Toronto is not built to be a defensive team.
No.
So I hate the people that will just be like, oh, we need to trade William Nylander for a shutdown defenseman.
You love bringing up William Nylander.
Dude, everybody hates William Nylander for some reason.
On your Twitter, you advocate for Nylander a lot.
I still don't understand. Look, if you guys are genuinely curious, and I know that points per game doesn't tell the whole story, but go on Cap Friendly, sort by salary from like 6.5 million to 7.5 million, because Willie's at like 6.9, so it gives you like a little bit of wiggle room. And just look at the points per game percentage and look at where Willie is in comparison to everybody else. It'll shock you.
He's also an advanced stats guy. Like, he's one of the best at carrying the puck into the zone.
Yeah.
Like, he's one of the better players in the league at that, and that's like huge for the Leafs, especially like the way they're playing right now. A guy like him is huge. I fully agree that Nylander is an important part of this team.
The only criticism I have with William Nylander is this guy kind of lives and dies with confidence. Where last year you saw where he was just like in a complete slump and he just couldn't get anything going for him. And then as soon as he started to heat up this year, the guy just looks lights out. And the other criticism I have with him is he's not. I don't feel like he's always as invested into like what's happening like with the organization and with the team as he should be, and a lot of the times like he's a scapegoat for whenever the Leafs lose. Like, William Nylander, like I hear Jeff O'Neill or whatever on TSN just ream him about how he doesn't go into corners and pick up pucks. Like, William Nylander is not built to go into corners and pick up pucks when you're going up against a guy like Zdeno Chara or like Zadorov or someone just absolutely massive, right? Like, but again, like it's the underlying system that Babcock was trying to kind of play and utilize. And the first game with Sheldon Keefe, Austin Matthews set a career high, in 5-on-5 ice time.
Really? I didn't know that.
It was over 17 minutes. It was like 17:35 or something. Pardon me. It wasn't a career high in 5-on-5 ice time. It was like he's only done that like 8 times in his career.
Like a significant amount of 5-on-5.
Yes, he's starting to see more 5-on-5, which he should. Like,
he's like the best player on the team. You got to give him as much minutes as possible.
Exactly,
that's my big point is that this guy's gonna play his best players. You need to roll with your best players. It's just how it is. I want to see if they do it in playoffs because it's the same thing in playoffs.
If we get to playoffs,
if they get to playoffs.
It's an if, not a big if. It looks like they're gonna make playoffs.
I'm just like
There's an if. There's an if.
Mm-hmm. But like you said, not a big if. I don't know. Montreal's not a better team than Toronto. I want them to be better.
They're playing much better.
Not their last 4. Their last 4 they've lost.
Yeah.
But other than that, like they have looked good, Montreal. But I don't know. Toronto's just a bigger team than them. I think they're going to end up better off. The Panthers have been surprising. Maybe the Panthers can keep it going. Maybe if Bobrovsky starts playing a little bit better.
I can't believe how well they're doing with the worst goalie in the NHL on their team.
He's been so bad.
We did, me and Jack did the episode on like the worst starts to the NHL season so far, and by far Bobrovsky is the worst performing
100%.
player of the season.
It's not even
like not even like the worst goalie. He's the worst player in the entire NHL right now. Like he's making $10 million a year, putting up like high 3s for goals against, like mid 800s for save percentage, something crazy like that. But I can't see. Maybe the team keeps it and Bobrovsky can figure some shit out, then they can stay there. But the team has to maintain that level. Bobrovsky's got to find the level. But ultimately, I think still a lot of hockey left. I think the Leafs will be top 3. We'll talk about the seeding a little bit later. But
yeah, well, and again, like it's. A new coach coming in, like it doesn't solve all your problems. Sure, it looks good right now, and I'm still like very touchy go. Like I'm still wondering if it's okay to like be excited to like have hope again that we're like a.
You should be excited.
No, and I love watching them. Like they're actually exciting to watch now. I guess I'd say that after we've lost 6 in a row, but.
Hey man, just look at Toronto organizations after a coaching change.
Yeah,
Nick Nurse.
Don't
Keefe.
Well, you could even talk about the Marlies when you brought up before we started recording about Dubas wanting a coach to buy into his system, and then get Keefe involved in the Marlies, and all of a sudden they turn it around, and a couple years later he won the Calder Cup. And
I was at that game. It was a great game.
And Keefe's just a notorious winner. Like his first coaching job with the Pembroke Lumber Kings, he won his first 5 years. He won the championship. He 5-peated.
Yep.
In that role.
He's with the Sioux. And they're just fucked.
He's with the Sioux.
They're so good. I don't understand.
The Sioux, we didn't win anything there, but then he went to the Marlies had 2 full seasons. Then he had the 3rd season. He got the Calder Cup. So yeah, this guy's a notorious winner.
Yeah, I think he was the eventual predecessor. Everybody knew it coming in.
He's Dubas' guy.
Yeah, he's always been Dubas' guy. He's been with Dubas, like I said, the majority of Dubas' career, kind of, and he's just somebody that has definitely understands what Kyle's trying to do with the team. And I think that was something also that Babcock didn't really understand. And he has his own philosophy and is very kind of narrow-minded, Babcock, of course. And Keefe is, from what I can tell so far, is somebody who's just very much like, okay, yep, like this is working, okay, yep. This isn't working, okay, yep, let's fix this. And he's very just, he's like an open book, I want to describe him, from what I can tell so far, which is really good. And just like, man, like he seems to be actually like taking responsibility for things which Babcock didn't do. And if you think of the X amount of playoff series that we've lost in the past 3 years and these kind of like big games, like Babcock was never the one to kind of like take responsibility for it and admit that like, oh yeah, like this was my bad, I could have done this. Like there was a point even Kyle Dubas took responsibility and was like, I didn't give you the correct players for a penalty kill or something. I forget what it was exactly, but like as a coach, like you need to swallow your pride at some points and admit when you've done something wrong, and that's just something that isn't in Mike Babcock's character.
Well, I mean, when you lose 2 straight series to Boston, and then that's your 3rd straight first-round exit, I mean, I don't like comparing the Washington one because they weren't good enough to really win that series, but last 2 years they have been good enough, and especially last year they had the series in their hands at home in Game 6 to win that series, and they didn't get it done. And they played very poorly in Game 6. They played very poorly in Game 7. Like you said, Babcock did not, take any blame for it at all. When you look, you got to look at what the problem was, and the problem really wasn't the player set. And I think the mark of a great coach is to be able to tinker your system to cater to the players that you have involved. Obviously, you want players to fit your style of coaching, but when you realize you got this many talented players that aren't quite, your usual dynamic of coaching, you got to be able to, if you're an elite coach, you got to be able to fix that. And Babcock never fixed his philosophy at all towards the players that they had, and ultimately that's where the downfall kind of stemmed from.
Exactly, and I hear people saying things because the power play and the penalty kill has also been a huge factor for the Leafs and have been just absolutely abysmal. And people are saying, "Oh, it's Dave Haxtell's fault." Like, no, like at the end of the day, it's your head coach who ultimately makes the decisions. They're just there to kind of have their kind of input. And you've seen just an immediate change as soon as Sheldon Keefe has come in, like Tyson Barrie on the power play. The best thing I've ever seen with the Leafs in the past 3 years is Sheldon Keefe taking a timeout after his first power play unit was tired, just to keep them on the ice for the next 40 minutes when there's 8 minutes left in the third period. I could not believe what I was seeing, and it's just he said it in an interview after that it was a big moment in the game and you need your big players to have that opportunity there. I think it was was it Colorado? It was Colorado. It was last night or the night before. No, not last night.
It was Colorado?
Yeah, it was Colorado.
Okay.
And he just I couldn't believe it because there's 8 minutes left in the third and we're up by, I think it was 2 goals still or 1 goal. Anyways, we were up and he realized that this was an important part of the game and he needed his best players on the ice. Everything Keefe has done has just been like a giant fucking middle finger to Babcock. It's
literally do what he didn't do.
Yeah.
And you probably will do something right.
Yeah.
You'll get it going.
Man, I couldn't believe it. I was like, what is happening right now? Why wasn't this guy employed 2 years ago?
I think if they can change and just get their defensive end going, truthfully going, right now Toronto has the most goals against, other than the Detroit Red Wings,
who suck.
Yes.
Who are horrible.
Yes.
The Detroit Red Wings have 96 goals against. The Toronto Maple Leafs have 85.
That's very alarming.
The other team that's close to them is the Florida Panthers with 84 goals against. And it's scary because Toronto's also the 4th highest scoring team in the league.
Yeah, it's very yin and yang. It's we produce so much offense, but at the same time we are so bad defensively that.
So if they can just sort of smarten it up defensively and just keep that offense going, it's a scary team. And I mean, everyone knows that Toronto's full of firepower. That's really what they're built off of. But you got to tighten it up a little bit defensively. It doesn't have to be leaps and bounds because that's not going to happen. I'm sorry. You don't have the money for it. You don't have the defensive players for it. But you have the offensive players to make up for it as long as you make those changes. And that's the changes that have to be made by the coach. Offensively, Mike Babcock wasn't doing a bad job offensively with the team. They have 81 goals.
I think it's kind of hard. I think it's kind of hard to do a bad job being offensively with this team.
That's what I'm saying. But you have to find a way to get it done defensively.
Yeah.
What was the final score of the Colorado?
It was
5-3.
5-3?
5-3?
Yeah, because Hyman had the empty netter with 0.1 seconds left. Yeah, I completely agree, Nico. I'm curious to see if Dubas now moves a prospect in an attempt to get some kind of right-handed help. Not that Justin Hall's been playing bad. I think Justin Hall's actually been fairly decent for what has been expected of him. Cody Ceci also made a legitimately game-saving goal or game-saving block against Nathan McKinnon last night, which I couldn't believe happened, but it did because of Cody Ceci. But I'm curious now to see if Dubas makes a move not now, obviously, just because like I feel like he wants to get a kind of an idea of where he's at with the team with Sheldon Keefe in.
Maybe like after 10 games he'll evaluate.
But in the future, like towards the trade deadline, is that something they look at? Because the problem is still the defense. And there's a lot of teams like Buffalo. Obviously, you don't want to necessarily trade with a rival, especially a division rival, but they have an absurd amount of NHL caliber right-handed defensemen. Ristolainen, Jokiharju, Colin Miller's like a healthy scratch now, who they just signed in the offseason. So like that was somebody that I wanted to see come to Toronto in general before Tyson Barrie was even announced. He was kind of like my number one just because of his contract. But I'm curious to see if Dubas now will do something in the future to kind of address this, or is this something that was just strictly a coaching issue? Because like you said, Nico, like that's the problem that they have to fix going forward. I think the penalty kill and the power play will kind of regulate itself out.
Especially when players start to come back.
Yeah, especially Mitch Marner, like you said, on the penalty kill.
Even missing Kerfoot for a bit. Like it's not like he's just another guy in the ice. He plays a role.
Jason Spezza has 15 points right now. Wait, no, that's not right.
That's wrong. That's 8 points.
I was going to say, maybe it's like 8 points in 15 games?
8 points in 15 games.
Okay, yeah, sorry. Which is absurd that he's been a healthy scratch for so long.
Like, you were talking about Babcock being an asshole. How about scratching Jason Spezza on his first game, on his potential first game in his hometown, and he bought like a bunch of I think he bought like 30 tickets for
friends and family, yeah.
And then Babcock fucking scratched him. Can you believe that?
And that's the thing that like players notice too, and that's what'll make you like get on your coach.
100%. I would if I was playing a game and I went somewhere and then they're like, hey man, like we just signed you, your sixth signing for Toronto. We're actually going to go back to where you're from, or not necessarily where you're from, but where you played your whole career, where people know Jason Spezza from his career, and just be like, we're going to scratch you. You're like, you sick or anything? No. You hurt? No. Why aren't you playing? It's like, coach told me no. Like, that's horrible. Like, that would be just a pure heartbreaker. Imagine 30 tickets for friends and family.
That's absurd.
That's horrible. Actually, I didn't know that part of the story. That's really upsetting.
Sheldon Keefe dressed Nick Shore in Colorado last night because he's from Denver, Colorado, and he knew that coming back into that building and being around like his hometown and everything, it's like Keefe's entire objective is to just make hockey fun again for the Leafs, and he's doing it. And Nick Shore scored, so I mean, like. I don't understand how you write this script. Everything has just kind of been brought back onto the rails for Toronto. And man, like I haven't been this excited for the Leafs since the Tyson Barrie trade.
Probably since they brought in Mike Babcock.
What a day. You remember that? That was insane.
People were fired up with Mike Babcock.
Obviously, this guy, how good was he for Detroit? And then you get this guy, like how much success he did for Detroit and Canada. And you thought great. You thought maybe within the 8 years he could get.
But then looking back, like I don't know, like Nico could have fucking coached that Detroit team to a Stanley Cup.
Hey man, I coached our SPAD team.
Hey, you could say that about
championship win in first year.
You could say that about the Leafs, the team that they have. They could have anybody coaching them. They could win a Stanley Cup with what they have right now.
Well, clearly not Mike Babcock.
Well, clearly not Mike Babcock, but I think it's on the up. I mean, we'll see after I'll give him 10 games with Keefe. Obviously, it's been great so far, but honeymoon phase, like you said, I've been a fan of teams who hire a new coach, all of a sudden there's great success, and then it just falls off the face of the earth.
Man United! Ooh.
Man, I feel like soccer's a little bit of a different circumstance.
No, but
I get what you're saying.
That's what I mean, though. Like, you can't get too excited too early.
Which is why I'm super skeptical.
Like, okay, it's a good start. Where can we build on this from here? What can we do to become even better, get ourselves back in a playoff position, and get ready for the deep playoff run that we were expecting, not just wanting. And I think that's it for this episode. A good way to finish it. We'll see how Keefe does for the rest of this season. We'll see how the Leafs do in the playoffs. We'll have an NHL seeding episode coming up very soon for just how we think that the playoff system is going to look in the NHL. But that'll wrap it up from us. Thank you for listening. Daily content on the way. Keep coming back for more.